Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Happy solstice, everyone. I'm Tempest Zakroff, and today we are talking about applying visual alchemy, harnessing the magic of art in ritual and spellcraft. So I'm going to pull up a little slideshow so that you also have pretty things to look at while I am diving into the wonderful world of art and magic with you. So let us make this happen. All right. Boom. Hopefully y'all can see that. Excellent. All right. So art, magic, things I am very, very passionate about. If you've read Sigil Witchery, if you've seen the Liminal Spirits Oracle, you know that art and magic are integral to my life, my existence, my practice. I see art as my primary form of magic, and it really influences everything that I do. So, art is one of the oldest, most ancient forms of magic. Humankind creates to express itself. When we think about music, dance, visual arts, theater, poetry, they all serve to relate to the mystery and the reality of our existence. This is why we create. So, through art, through it, we give form to the divine. We share our personal and our cultural stories. We interact with our environment and with each other. It's kind of one of the most important things about art. Art is a primary form of communication, whether we are using it to commemorate an occasion or honor a person, to explore a concept, a story, a mystery. We use it to bring social awareness, to build and decorate the living space around us. As we've recognized in the pandemic over the last 2.5 to 3 years, is how important art is to our lives. It is surrounding us. It's not just the thing that's hanging on your wall. It is the books that you're reading. It is the movies and shows that you're watching. It is how you adorn your body. It's how we move through our spaces, how we decorate and recreate our spaces around us, indoor and outdoor, to affect our mental state of being, our spiritual sense, our emotional sense of being. So, when I really put into that part of art and magic is its creation. And this is something that is accessible to all. I really want to bring it home to y'all that art should be accessible to everyone. We have been in a society for the last 200 or so years that has really separated art from everyday and put it up in little pristine sections away from everybody else and relegating it that only these people do. And we judge this and that. But art is a legacy for all people. So I want you to put aside any thoughts of like, I'm not an artist. You don't have to be an artiste. You, as a human being, though, can make art, right? So relax a little bit. We're going to go look a little bit into why art is an integral part of our being. But also talking about, since here we are LlewellynCon, so we're also going to talk about magic and spellcraft and ritual, which are also, just like art, vehicles of communication. All right, when you're thinking about setting out ritual, how you speak in a ritual, how you might play music, how you use incense, how you dress, how you put a candle together for a spell, right? These are also forms of communication, making your mark upon the world. So through magic and ritual and spellcraft, we focus our intentions to influence the world around us, to create new forms, right? New forms and patterns. We're trying to shift the pattern, make changes happen in the world around us. And we also may appeal to align with deities and spirits, whether they are within us, outside of us, the genus loci, all of these different aspects of ourselves. Thinking about it in very specific terms or examples, right? A votive candle gives form to will through color. You might choose a specific color. You might select one that has a particular smell, or anoint it with an oil. You burn it, right? So there's the process of the visual of recognizing it being burned. And you might even carve a sigil or add different images. Perhaps a saint or a deity is also applied to the votive holder for that candle. So you are using that image to also focus that intent beyond the color and the image. Think about puppets, right? Puppets are crafted to take on the likeness of a person or an animal to affect that subject sympathetically, or act as an intermediary or act as a vessel, like a spirit vessel for it. We understand as magical, magical practitioners in a much more larger concept of the word that we see that connection between the image and that can be used for healing, it can be used for aid and protection, it can be used to for justice. There are so many different applications, but we have that visual connection that is also incorporating other elements. So we're thinking about that. You might think about how you set up an altar or a shrine, curated items that you've put together to appease a deity, to invoke them, to honor an ancestor. All of those things, those elements that you bring together, whether it's a photo or a candle or a pin from your grandmother, a glass of vodka, these things are curated that you bring these elements together that create a visual impact as also for the other senses as well. So truly it is the process of creation combined with the harnessing of will that creates magic which extends beyond the sum of its parts, right? These things, we might not see them as particularly artful or magical, but when we put them together, we get a deeper sense of magic, right? We make things happen. Now, this is something that has been with us since the dawn of humanity, right? The brain that we have right now is the same as our ancestors had 200,000 years ago or more. Right? We tend to think, oh, we're very modern, very sophisticated. But when you consider cave paintings and understanding that there is deliberate marks that are made that with firelight that these images come alive, that there are marks of identity, of storytelling, this is us, and they're highly sophisticated as well. They are not primitive as many art historians like to just sort of group it off to the side, right? They continue to inspire artists today. And the art making process, right, says we began with art, we thrive because of art. And here are a few things of how art has pushed us as a civilization, as many different cultures, but simply as evolution itself as of the human species. So art helps us focus our attention, which is a necessary skill for learning and adapting, right? We need to be able to have attention. Many of us have also discovered during the pandemic of different levels of ADHD, neurodivergence, all the different things of what focuses and pulls our attention and how do we cope with that and how it shifts and changes our lives. And to create an image, you need to be able to focus on it clearly and pay attention to those details. So this is an evolutionary thing to be able to look at that animal and represent it within the cave, to come up with a different design and then incorporate it into clothing, into jewelry, into instruments, all of these different aspects of it. Another thing that art helps us with is it helps to build awareness of the world around us, as well as ourselves. This is that part of the human expression. And also including framing time, right? Past, present, and future. We can use art to mark our journeys, our personal journeys, our explorations with each other. Think about the albums that we create, right? Whether it's through a wedding or a hand festing, the memorials that we make with photos, right? These all are marking the passing of time. But we also look at our children's drawings, right? And how we move through time, the things that we create with that. Other aspects, excuse me, to be able to recreate what we see in the world around us requires the use of memory. Right? So it's not like you just are looking at that horse out in the field going to the cave and, like, oh, you're not going to drag the horse into the cave. It's not going to work very well. So instead, we have to observe the world around us and then we commit it to memory. And so there's the ability to recall images at will. So thinking about that sense of building memory, right, is really important for human beings. This is how we can tell stories. It does not have to always be picture perfect images, but there is that recollection. And so the capacity to build up memory and to use it, really, really important in an evolutionary step. It also, as art, helps to externalize the brain's information, right? Because we can't hold on to everything. This is why we like to have these collections of photos and books and such, and to look at art on walls. So when you think about it, art is essentially a download of storing information outside of ourselves. And it also, in turn, once we store this information outside of ourselves, we can more easily share it with other people. Right? It can be saved for others. This is why we still have, right, the preservation of those cave paintings that are over 200,000 years old, right? That's that story continually being told when we visit a museum or a different art experience or go to a concert or listen to poetry, right? We are engaging with that sort of memory offload, right? We are becoming sort of hard drives for each other and sharing that. Of course, not always perfect, but it's still that experience that changes in there. Art also sets the stage for symbolism. This is huge. The idea that a drawing, all right, a few simple marks can stand in for a larger concept or idea, really, really big for our brains. So we're not only creating these images, but we're also able to internally retain meaning for them and purpose for them so that we know this sigil is for that. This mark means that belongs to her or him. That spot, right, is marked by this symbol here, and this is what is done in this place. So symbols allow us to compact and simplify ideas so that they're more easily transferable, right? They are condensing down these ideas into this kind of pure essence. And when you think about when we do traditional spell work, right, when we're bringing all of these elements together, we're taking those ideas and putting them into one. And so drawing is a very easy way, right, to do it with practice. Somebody will say, but I can't draw. It's not the point here, right? Practice. Think about the first time you ever cast a magical circle, if you've done that within your practice, right? Or recited a poem to a deity, or cracked an egg and made something, right? It's always a building experience. It's using that memory, right? It's using that what we've learned and applying it. The same is true with drawing. So within this also is that art fosters our sense of imagination and play. Play is important. I think play is hugely important for magic. When we think about children are most apt to see the unseen world and to express things and to really actually to manifest things because they have a more simpler way of looking at the world around us. And we sort of lose that sense of imagination and play as we get older, or we can, unfortunately. So when we access that, we allow ourselves to create new ideas and combinations to exploration. So art helps us to build science, mathematics, to create other parts of civilization, to problem solve. All of this is coming from those skills that art has created in our brains. So abstraction, distortion, stylization, these are the results of choices requiring forethought and wonder. So it's not just a simplifying as sort of dumbing something down. It is beyond that. It's actually making it more in-depth, more exploratory, kind of pushing the borders of what we see and experience to a new level. Right. And think about how we often want to do that in ritual, right? We want to be able to transcend our current experience to make our reality different, to alter and shift ourselves, our relationships with each other, our environment. We do that through ritual and magic. And lastly, through art making, we build creative intelligence, which is the ability to solve those problems by imagining new and unique solutions. Right? The best thing that we can do as humans is not only create solutions, but to constantly question those solutions and see, is this the only one, or are there other ways of doing it? There's often multiple ways to solve a problem, which is also why we have so many different magical traditions and paths that often have very similar practices yet have evolved totally separately because of how we're continuing to play and explore of that. Let's see here. So now we've understood a little bit about how art has influenced our brains, right, and culture and time. Let's think about the line, the drawn mark, right? It is kind of the simplest thing we do. Think about as a child, if you took some paint, right, and just kind of smear paint on the walls or put your handprints on the walls or on the floor or on pieces of paper on yourself. And we often learn in school about the line, right? That the drawn line actually symbolizes a point in space or connection of points in space. Now, think about that as how you create ritual and cast spells, right? To work magic is that point in space to connect those dots together. So if we use actual physical lines to represent what we're doing, it helps us to collect those ideas and goals and create these new patterns. So whether a line is drawn as an artful mark, right, or used to channel spirit or energy through automatic drawing, one of the most amazing things about when we start to make these lines and make these marks for ourselves, we have an ability to enhance our memory. There's a powerful link between the drawn line and our memories. So when you write down those little notations for a spell or craft a sigil, right, or draw lines upon your body for ritual purposes, this is also connecting a multitude of your senses, experiences, and memory and uniting them. So it becomes an even more powerful experience. So that drawn mark strengthens our cognitive memory and aids us also in visualization. You can actually build up your powers of visualization through art to understand how those drawings are. You can have aphantasia and still find power in images, even if your brain doesn't conjure it in the way of the mind's eye. There's still a way that you're sensing it and can feel it through your body that can be equally as powerful. So we in turn add the cumulative effect of focusing our magical intent with when we make art, and then you're kind of really exploding in fantastic ways how you can amplify what you're doing with your magic and your ritual when you're incorporating art into it. Because these marks that we're making are describing the world around us, as well as the changes that we wish to influence in ourselves and our lives. So with that, right, let's look at a few other aspects here. In addition to the simplicity of line, right, we can add other elements that make more complex applications, such as color and texture and media, sound, smell, right? We're kind of fascinating all of these senses here. A painting not only represents a person or a deity, but it can also represent an atmosphere. It can talk about a location. It can embellish a memory. It can act as a portal, right? It's that visual recognition to the other that we can connect with. And every color that is used, every material or item that you might add, another layer of meaning is added to the piece. So it's, what does it mean to you when you use that color? People get obsessed about, what does red mean? What does blue mean? Well, what does it mean to you and how you experience it? And your memory is going to be the most powerful. Also, I'm talking about paintings, but let's not forget the 3D elements of sculpture. Sculpture and other handcrafted items such as magical tools, ceramics, pottery, weaving, right? All the things that you can touch and play with and use with your hands, use with your body. These things also collect and represent energy and the different marks that we make. So when you think about it, right? These 3D things that we can touch, we can hold it, we can see ourselves in it, or who made it, recognize the hand that crafted it. Even if it's not our own, if we collect art from other people, we can recognize that connection. And the item, as it's passed down through perhaps a coven, through generations, right, it collects more energy. So then there's another aspect to this. So thinking about that. But I don't want you to freak out again and just about thinking about like, oh, I've got to make amazing art. You are making amazing art in all the little things that you do, right? So not only do we use art to connect with the gods, but we can also use blends of incense and oils and tinctures and teas and herbal wands and things that we create, right? There is an artfulness to creating a aromascape, right? And an atmosphere scape. This is creating space. This is affecting our senses. This is artfulness. It might not seem like, again, get rid of the idea of high art on the walls, but the artful experience of working and blending those incenses and then burning them and having that experience. So you are using the arts when you are bringing these elements into what you're doing. Not only that, but also how you adorn your body, how you dress or perhaps don't dress for ritual work, all right? Or just day-to-day lives, like thinking about how you feel when you put a certain color or garment or piece of jewelry on. You might have a specific piece of jewelry that you put on every day that makes you feel protected and connected in there. So these choices that we make really can affect how we feel about ourselves, how others perceive us, how we interact with the divine and our environment. So People might say, oh, this is dressing up, it's playing costume. It's like, well, if it transforms yourself, if it transforms the experience, it does not have to be big things. It could be those little tiny things of putting on that ring, putting on an earring, putting on a particular shirt or shoes or makeup. All right. Makeup and tattoos are another ways that we adorn ourselves with art. All of these things are about solutions. So, giving you here as we're wrapping up a few different ways to think about how art can improve your magical practice. So it definitely builds visualization techniques, right? So for focusing on meditation and spellcraft, playing around with art, whether you're doing coloring books or playing around with draw lines, life drawing is a great thing to do. Taking a ceramics class, all of these things help to connect the physical and the visual. It promotes group work and collaboration. So you can craft sigils together, you can create banners, you can set your ritual space together, whether it's with a partner, with a coven, with a group, with new folks at a festival. All of these crafting experiences can really help build your magical practice. It aids in focusing dedication to your process and your craft, right? If you're going to make an incense blend, you want to take the time to build it properly so that it burns well, that it smells well. And so you see that as an artful process. It can guide you to a better understanding of ritual, right? To think about the steps of things. It can help foster a connection with deity or spirit, whether that is creating something in your landscape to honor the land spirits near you, or perhaps working with a particular deity so that you feel more connected to them. It can help you explore your subconscious, which can be scary ground for some of you, actually for all of us, right, from time to time. But it's good to get those things worked out and to kind of let yourself out, let yourself play a little bit more. We are beautifying the world with the art, right? That choice of a particular fabric to drape over an altar, how we are, again, adorning our bodies, right? This really affects our mood and our perception of the space and how we work through it. It can help improve your divination skills, that paying attention to looking at those details in those cards, whether it's a tarot deck or an oracle, seeing those details in there. It can also help expand your communication skills and senses, trying to get to what are you trying to express and how do you want other people to perceive what you're creating. It can help you develop intuition, build confidence with yourself, work with your dreams, new realms and visions, kind of play with that to enhance different types of trance. All right. You can easily develop stronger trance abilities with working in art through drawing, through any of the physical aspects of it. It can also help us decipher mysteries and determine meaning. And overall, it's just a really wonderfully healthy thing for you to explore. So stop putting art as the thing that is elite and on the walls and is a luxury, and start looking at all the art immediately around you every single day. I talk about this much more in greater detail in the book that's coming out in October, which is Visual Alchemy, which you see on the right. And of course, you can explore my art in oracle form with the newest one, the Anatomy of a Witch Oracle, coming out in August, as well as checking out many of the images I shared with you today on my website. I'm going to stop the share. You can always go back to the YouTube channel or find me on Google me, you'll find me. And I'm going to see if we have any questions, because I was trying not to get distracted by the chat. Rhiannon asks, any suggestions getting past you have to follow the rules? I stop myself before I even start. Great question, right? So often we hear like, oh, you can't do that, right? Question, where is that coming from? It's often coming from somebody else who also had issues about creating art. So allow yourself to play. Now, it is true that it's good to know what the rules are so that you can break them, but most of those rules are, I don't know if I should be able to use colorful language in this, but many of those social rules, right, are more about containing and controlling people, right, and who benefits when you give away your power. So allow yourself to play. It doesn't have to have an end result. That's the other thing. We often get tied up about the end result. It has to be something amazing that I can hang on the wall. No, it doesn't. I make lots of drawings and sketches that no one is ever going to see that still help create that final product. So you have to allow yourself to play. You have to allow yourself to problem solve. It is not a practice of perfection. It is a practice of experience, experimental, and exploratory. So allow yourself to play. Heidi asks, do you find your art can reflect the intention you have in mind when working on it? I find that my art seems to reflect the emotions I was feeling at the time. It can. Often when I'm creating pieces, a lot of the paintings I've done more recently have been a vision that I just have to get down in some way. And I'm often listening to podcasts and stories when I'm creating art. I can't do that when I'm writing books. I can't listen to words, but when I'm doing that. And what I love is that often what happened on the podcast or in the stories often somehow still relates back to what I'm creating in the vision. So there's that connection in there too, sort of the weaving of the liminal coming together. So let's see a few other things in there. Any other questions? I might have missed them, just still scrolling up. Oh, thank God. Y'all, you all have talking about flags. Yes, I got lots of that was a new thing for this year is the flags. So, all right. All right, and good. I'm glad to see everybody coming from everywhere. Think about the solstice, right? So the solstice is a time of extremes, right? We're at the longest day or the longest night of the year, depending on where you are in the world. And kind of think about that. It's still a point of balance. And how might you doodle express that to represent the extremes? Ralph asked, does your art dictate ritual or does ritual dictate art? Yes. I think about ritual as something that has many different moments. Like everything that we do is a tiny ritual that leads up to a bigger ritual. So that's life, right? These things coming together. But some art processes, right, have very specific ways in how they need to be done. So when you're thinking about doing a painting, right, prepping the surface, gessoing the surface, pulling out the paints, pulling out any reference images, setting, your audio enjoyment, right? Getting the lighting right. These are also part of the ritual that can happen. At the same time, once that painting is done, that experience of looking at that painting might inspire somebody else to be like, oh, that's an amazing painting of Pan. I'm inspired now to create a ritual in honor of Pan. So there's the ritual of creating the art, and then there's the life that the art takes on after that that can also inspire ritual. So there are two things that are always constantly in cahoots with each other. So I think we're almost got a couple more minutes left. Any other questions that you might have about, there's so many different ways. Heidi says, do you find getting a different energy from dance and other forms of art? Ask the ex-ballet dancer. So that's a great question too. So I have, some of you might know, I am also a dancer. So visual artist and a dancer, performer. You don't want me to sing though. And it does feel different. So when I'm using my body as the most primary tool of expression through dance, I am creating the images, right? My body is the paintbrush and creating the palette, right? All of these things flowing together in connection with the music. And so there's that sense of movement, but still when I'm creating images, there's still movement to it, right? How my hand is moving. So it's just a different perception of using the whole body to part of my body and different aspects of my brain as well. So it's the wonderful thing, right? All these different forms of expression, and all of our brains are different. So what kind of expression works well for your particular brain? That's why we have musicians and poets and writers and theatrical folks and folks who knit and folks who make stitches and folks who build, amazing wood things, and will play with glass and clay and all of these things. And they're all valid and they're all amazing in there. So all of these things express what it is to be human. And in that revelry, in that sense of play and imagination and expression, is magic itself. So I hope you found this inspiring on this beautiful solstice. And really look around you, start thinking about all of the art that is present, and allow yourself to play, to imagine, and you will find that you'll have a deeper connection to yourself, to the world around you, to each other, especially to your art and your magic. Thank you all so much for being here. And of course, you can find me online on Instagram, on Facebook, on Twitter. You can visit that link tree for Alchemy, lauratempestzakroff.com, and all that other good stuff. So you can find more. You haven't had enough this morning. So thank you, everybody at LlewellynCon. Thank you all for joining, and hope to see you all in physical space again soon.